I've got a log here from Hanni1312, and I do apologize. This log is from back in September 25th, quite a while ago. I do apologize for missing you, and thank you for reminding me that I had overlooked you. Like I say, I do try not to miss anybody, but occasionally I do, and sorry for that. I have looked at your log, and it's a little hard to tell. The flights are relatively short. The flights are typically in the range. Oh, here's a 2-minute flight. Well, we'll definitely take a look at that. But I did find something really interesting in here that I wanted to show because well, it's always nice when Blackbox gives us a very clear-cut example of something going wrong, uh, and uh, and so here it is. And isn't that nice? Let's take a look at it. So here I've got RC command pitch, and actually let's just shuffle this around a little bit. RC command pitch and gyro pitch there, and also let's just put the throttle on here so we can see what's going on. And then here's PID on pitch down on the bottom. And we can see here that you raise the throttle and you do a strong punch out, and that's a very good way to look for the effect of the I term and the P term. If you raise the throttle and you start to get P term oscillations, that's a clear indication that your P gain is too high. If you raise the throttle and the copter pitches forward or pitches backward, usually forward or backward, not left or right, that's an indication that your pitch I term may be too low. Now, I did spend some time looking through here, looking for indications of whether your P gain was about right or not. It was a little hard to judge. I didn't see any dramatic P term oscillations that were clear signs of excess P gain, but it's a little hard to tell without. The best way to judge whether your P gain is right is to listen to the motors, and you'll hear the oscillations, and you'll know that it's too high. And then you can look at Blackbox and figure out whether it's pitch or roll or what's doing it. But frankly, unless it's a really egregious case, I don't really like to judge excess P gain just from looking at the Blackbox logs. You listen to the motors, you'll hear it. But I did see something really interesting here. So here you raise the throttle and you do a nice little punch out. And we can see, by the way, that the P term on pitch at least is very docile during this whole time. It is not oscillating hard. We don't really see anything like that. And in fact, if we look at the gyro, there's not really any gyro oscillations. So we could conclude from this that your P gain is not too high on pitch anyway. And we'll take a look at roll in a second. But I do see something very interesting. As you raise the throttle, what happens to your P term? It goes negative. Now, the P term going negative, that is, I believe that is pitch backwards. And what happens to your gyro? Your gyro goes positive, and that's pitch forwards. Now, the first thing I always want to do when something like this happens is I ask myself, was that move commanded? I'm going to go look at the stick, and I'm going to look at the RC command trace, and I can see that during this move you kept your stick exactly centered. So good for you. That's what you want to do. So what's happening here? Well, since the stick was centered, any error that occurred must have been externally induced. The P term went negative in order to counteract an externally induced error. The error was caused because the copter started rolling forwards, or pitching forwards when you punched the throttle. And the P term is doing the right thing by trying to counteract this move. So again, just to recap, because I did that a little quickly, we see that the copter is pitching forward during this move because the gyro trace goes positive. We see that the P term is counteracting that because it is negative. It's on the opposite side of the line from the gyro. The P term is trying to fight that move. The reason it's trying to fight that move is because the stick is centered, therefore no movement is what's being commanded. The gyro shows that the copter is pitching forward, so the P term is trying to reduce the error by causing there to be no movement. Okay, so the P term is doing the right thing here. Why did the copter pitch forward? That's the next question we should consider. Well, it's usually the case that a copter is not perfectly aerodynamically symmetrical, if you will, that the center of thrust is not directly in front of the center of gravity. And it's also often the case that even if the center of thrust was perfectly centered on the center of gravity, there would be asymmetrical aerodynamic effects vortices coming off the props, any number of things that mean that when you raise the throttle on the copter will not tend to fly perfectly straight up, but will tend to pitch, usually pitch forward or backward. And the most common thing I've seen is that when you raise the throttle hard, the copter pitches forward, and when you drop the throttle, the copter pitches backward. And in fact, look what we see here. You raise the throttle, the copter pitches forward. You cut the throttle, the copter pitches backward. There you go. And it's very consistent. As you raise the throttle, it pitches forward. As you cut the throttle, it pitches backward. So what can we do about this? That's a normal behavior that we have to tune out. Well, how can we tune it out? Well, the traditional way of doing that is to raise the I term, right? We raise the I term, and the I term helps maintain the attitude against this kind of persistent bias. But I have a feeling, and I'm not looking at your config dump. You didn't post your config dump, so I don't know what your PIDs are. But I have a feeling that because the P term is so sort of calm and well behaved during this relatively extreme maneuver, that possibly you may want to increase your P gain. And we've talked about in other videos that there's an interaction between P and I, where if you have a problem that I should be dealing with, that increasing P can sometimes leave less work for the I term to pick up, and therefore instead of raising your I gain, you can raise your P gain. So it's possible that raising P gain is called for here, and if not, then raising I gain is definitely called for here. Because when you punch the throttle like this, you definitely should see very little to any coupling between the pitch and the throttle. Well, what about roll? Let's have a look at what roll does during the same scenario. And here you raise the throttle, and we can see here some very clear oscillations, which they come on as the throttle peaks, and then as the throttle drops, they go away. So it seems, there it is again, it seems like this is a good indication that you may have excess P gain on roll because these are, notice that this oscillation starts small and then sort of accelerates, gets bigger, and then decays as the throttle is dropped. That's very typical of a P-term oscillation. If you had, let's say you had some just regular vibration, a prop was off balance a little bit or something like that, you had regular vibration and you were getting resonance on your frame. Well, then what you would see is that you would have strong oscillations at certain throttle positions, but then at other throttle positions it would go away. And in fact, usually high throttle is where the vibrations are the weakest. Although the motors have a lot of energy, the vibrations become so high frequency that they're easily filtered out. So if you were to have an oscillation, say at this throttle point, at 1750, but not at 1850, then I would think that was a balance issue that either needed to fix the thing that was out of balance or filter it better. But because we see here that these oscillations get stronger and stronger as the throttle goes up and then weaker as the throttle goes down, that's probably more indicative of excess P gain. And we see some oscillations here in the P term, and this is a little bit more than activity than I would like to see. If we look right here, nothing crazy is going on with your stick. Have a look at your roll stick, right? Nothing crazy. It looks like your roll and your yaw are both pushed to the right. It looks like you're just doing a relatively mild coordinated turn. So good. But look, the rolled P term is constantly oscillating through this whole move, And then it gets really bad here. And then I guess, I don't know what's going on here. It's bad. And then here's terrible. Oh, it kills me. It hurts to see. So it feels like you got too much roll P gain on roll. Sometimes if you have just a little bit too much P gain, you can increase D to fix it. But I don't think that's what we got going on here. I think you got way too much P gain on roll, and I would definitely suggest reducing that. All right. Well, I do apologize again for missing you, and as usual, I hope that's helpful, and happy flying.